You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. So Ed knows this. I don't know how much I've conveyed it on the show, but it's been a little stressful the last couple of weeks. I'm selling the house. I'm looking for an apartment. By the way, most landlords seem to be scumbags. I backed out of at least 2 deals so far because of the bait and switch. And I'm an adult, right? Like, I'm not like looking for a place in college or somebody who doesn't have good credit. I'm a homeowner who's selling his home and is taking all this profit and putting it in the bank. He just needs a place to live while he looks for the next house he's going to buy. So I'm like this unicorn out there who's got incredible credit, good pay, and is an adult. And I am amazed at what people have to do to rent a place at this point. I mean, it is frightening to see. So I'm closing in a couple of weeks. I think I might have a place. I'm not exactly sure. The kids are going back to school. I'm moving one down to the University of Illinois next weekend. Like, it's busy, which is why you haven't seen video on the YouTube channel lately, but I'm going to get back to it as soon as I can spare a little bit more time for everything that I do, because I'm just kind of crunched. And in the middle of it, that means I don't get to everything that I want to do with all of the podcasts. So I didn't promote Sox in the Basement, Ed. Like, it came out, I didn't do anything. Nothing on social media, nothing on Facebook. I didn't say a word. And the numbers are larger than normal. Why do you think that is?
Well, could it be that we went off, you in particular went off on a certain White Sox broadcaster? John Schriffen, yeah?
Yeah, and it's amazing the response in the DMs and on different social media channels and just the way that people have reacted to it. And I've gotten text and phone calls, and I've had insiders reach out to me and say, you're not far off on the feelings around that. And I've had interesting people follow us on social media that were maybe mentioned on that show. And I feel like I was not far off on the belief in-house over him. And I can't, you get a lot of stuff after you say something like that. You get a lot of people who reach out and be like, I have inside information, right? And I some of them I trust and some of them I don't. So I'm not going to repeat it all. But I do believe, after reading all the things that have been sent to me, and some of the people have reached out to me, I do believe that what we're dealing with is a team that knows this isn't the long-term answer at broadcaster. But it is very possible that Jerry Reinsdorf, remember that policy, like, he didn't want to get rid of Pedro, right? He didn't want to get rid of Pedro. Why? Because Pedro was signed for another year and a half. Remember that? He didn't want to get rid of him because, if it was only a half a year, or if it was only a year, I'll move on from the manager. But it's a year and a half to pay somebody to be at home, right? Strangely enough, it's about a year and a half on John Schriffen, right? Like, I wonder if he is the broadcaster in 26. And he may sit there and say, look, I'm not going to pay a broadcaster to sit at home for a year. So you may still have him for a while. But I don't know, man. I think that I brought it up in the last show. I brought up how Steve Stone had to sit there and listen to him wax poetic on the air about Dick Allen. And then finally, and you could hear it in Stone's voice. Steve Stone really kind of conveys his emotions, right? He doesn't really hide them.
No, at this point, Steve Stone does not care.
There's snark. There was snark when he was with Harry and he was with the Cubs, right? When he was with the Cubs and he was with Harry, and Harry was getting older, right? Like, one of my favorite calls of all time is Harry Carey towards the end. And my grandfather used to sit around and watch Cubs games in the middle of the afternoon because he wouldn't get cable.
Yeah, my grandfather did the same thing, and he would scream at the TV.
Right, he was an old Italian man who sat in his kitchen, who every day walked up to the store to buy the fruits and the meats he was going to eat. He would take out some salami, a little bit of cheese, right? Couple of fresh peppers, open up one of those big jugs of wine, and he would sit there and watch a ball game. He had a talker because he had had his voice box removed, so he'd be like, look at this tape. And it was just, I would sit there and just watch the game with him. And you would listen to Steve Stone and Harry Carey. I mean, that was the only time I watched the Cubs because I was a White Sox fan. He was a Sox fan too, but he just couldn't get the Sox because he wasn't going to pay for cable. He's like the original, I'm not paying for that, Jerry Reinsdorf guy. God rest his soul. He's been gone for almost 20 years. God rest his soul. Okay. I would listen, and towards the end with Harry, there was a call where home run by a Cubs player, I don't know who it was, and the ball has sailed out of the stadium. As the ball is landing over the wall in the street, you hear Harry go, "It could be! It's gone, Ed. It's already gone."
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that happened a lot to Harry at the end. He just couldn't quite keep up.
The TV, the batter is rounding third. It might be. This is happening. I'm not exaggerating. He touches home plate. He's hitting high fives. And he yells, "It is! Holy cow!" And here's Steve Stone. And this is a younger Steve Stone. And that was the longest home run I've ever witnessed. Like, he just makes fun of Harry right there. That's the longest home run because, I mean, it took forever for that ball to get out of the ballpark. And he just like he's making fun of him. Now, it's lighthearted because he liked Harry, right? But Steve Stone, he has snark. He's a snarky guy.
Well, and Steve Stone has never pulled punches. That's why he got fired from the Cubs in the first place, because he and Chip Carey sat there and said, the Cubs suck, while they were broadcasting for the Cubs, because they did. They did. They were a terrible team. And then the front office went, well, we can't have that now. And Steve Stone ended up on the radio for the White Sox. So, and then he ended up in the booth.
And so this is what he is. And for him, you really think about it, because I brought it up last week, and there's been more than one instance of this. Here's Schriffen, who couldn't even pronounce Bill Veck's name properly, who's still learning what the team is, waxing poetic about Dick Allen because some producer gave him notes, or he looked it up on Wikipedia.
Right.
Acting like he's like a big Dick Allen expert. And Steve Stone played with Dick Allen.
Knew the guy.
And Stone
personally knew the guy.
And I'm paraphrasing his comment, but I'm really close on this. Stone, like, all of a sudden breaks in and goes, well, I can talk about Dick Allen because he was one of my teammates. And the way he said it was as if, like, hey, buddy, you're the play-by-play guy. I'm the color guy. Ask me about Dick Allen. What are you talking about him for? And I'm telling you, I look at it over the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of Connor McKnight with Stone. And I think Stone's on a vacation, strangely. And they're not really around each other as much anymore.
No, I feel like Stone's been on vacation for a while. It's Gordon Beckham right now in the Mariners series that just wrapped up as we're recording.
I know Stone takes off for certain things, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but certain Jewish holidays he's not around. He does take little trips off and things like that. I think
he takes the West Coast off.
He does take the West Coast off, but there's been some times where I believe he's like on an actual vacation. He's been missing when it's not West Coast. I just wonder what's going on there because, again, like I said, I mean, this is an owner who doesn't care if it's bad. Look how long he made us stick around with Pedro. His team had to be at the point where it was the worst team in baseball history for him to finally move on from him and let Grady Sizemore take over. Remember this. So, I mean, it's possible. But until they get rid of this joker, I'm going to continue to hold his feet to the fire. Whenever I can bring myself to harm my ears by listening to a couple innings of him. Right? When I'm feeling saucy. When I'm like, okay, let's see what he has to say, and I turn the volume up.
When you're not into the broadcast, it's hard to really get yourself into the game in some ways, right? Because like I'm watching the extra inning, the getaway game against the Mariners, and it's a weird extra innings. They have Rojas throwing the ball away. They scored the leading run in the top of the 10th on a wild pitch. And, I'm listening, I'm half listening, half watching. And I couldn't get excited for that run scoring because part of me was just looking at it going, well, what's going on? Because I hear some excitement, I hear some yelling, but I don't hear much of a description of what's going on. And when Curtis Mead gets hit, there's just a lot of, well, I think he got hit. But the knob of the bat, but he got hit. But the knob, it's like, okay, there's no coherence in the booth.
No.
Gordon Beckham knows what he's talking about. Okay, I've gotten to like listening to Gordon Beckham analyze baseball over the years. And it's not just the apologies for the front office and for how poorly the organization's been run. It's not just the false bravado of who the real Sox fans are or any of that stuff. It's also just some guys can really paint a picture, okay, and some guys really can't. Len Casper is able to paint a picture, okay. Hawk, to a certain degree, when he was actually engaged in the game, could still paint a picture and could still bring something to it.
Picture about Yaz. I mean, he was really good about
everything was Yaz. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, Jose Contreras is on the mound, but Yaz. Let me tell you about Yaz.
I'll tell you something, Stone Pony. Then I ask Yaz, and Yaz tells me this, and and Steve is like, that's great. Like.
So me and Yaz, we go down to Cuba and we're talking to Fidel Castro.
And you know that Steve Stone wishes he could hear some Yaz stories right about now.
Goodness.
For exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. No high-pressure sales. They're not in your kitchen showing you a bunch of dingy example windows. You go to their place, check out what they have, and talk to an owner on site. Talk to an owner when there's an install. If there's any questions, any problems, they're there to take care of it. They're using all their own installers. They don't farm out the work. They've been doing it that way for 40 years in Oak Forest since 1985, with all major brands custom made and no stock items for a perfect fit. And I can tell you right now, as we got ready for the house sale, Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest was there to do a couple of updates. It was quick. It was professional. It was really well done. I'm highly impressed. Half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. I don't want to talk about that idiot anymore. There's plenty of time to talk about him. I just was amazed by the reaction of fans because I didn't do anything to promote the show. And the reaction of the fan base was, I mean, it shows. It shows. We struck a nerve when we were talking about him, and there's an awful lot of people that agree. On my fantasy baseball team right now, I have a couple of White Sox players. And this kind of shows you like what's happening with this team. The fact that I added Lenyn Sosa to my fantasy baseball team to get ready for the postseason because he's first base eligible, he's second base eligible, he's third base eligible, and I'm backing up Ellie De La Cruz with Bo Bichette because I just happen in my dynasty league to have both of them. But as we go into the playoffs, I have to have a guy who can back up Vlad Guerrero Jr. on my team in case something happens to him in the playoffs because we have these weird rules like you don't get to just go out and grab free agents. Like you better have a complete team in case somebody gets injured in the postseason in our league. And I need somebody to back up Jose Ramirez, who's my third baseman. I have a pretty stacked team. I've been building it for a long time. And I have to back up all these guys that are on my team. And I'm looking at Sosa and the way he's been performing. And not only is he scoring fantasy points, he is hitting the crap out of the ball right now. 293 over the last 30 days. 352 on base percentage. 537 slugging. 889 OPS. He's got 6 home runs over his last 22 games. You know, I said it last year, and there were times where I said it that people thought that I was crazy. That if you look at him at every level, he needs consistency and he needs the time to get over the hump. But when he was given that at every level, he succeeded. And he basically was able to do the same thing at AA that he did at single A and the same thing at AAA that he did at AA. And I said, let's just give him something consistent up there. And the Sox are doing it to a detriment because his glove is terrible. But they are getting him into the lineup. And the real question now becomes, and somebody's brought this up to me about him, is he a DH? And to me, if you're going to be a designated hitter, you need to hit 30 home runs a year minimum. Like if somebody's going to be just a hitter, and that's all you're bringing, I need 30 bombs. Now, he isn't going to get 30 bombs. He may get 20 this year. But if you look at the last 22 games, having 6 of them, if he's red hot the rest of the way, maybe. I don't think that's what he is. I'd rather them teach him how to use his glove. I'd rather them figure out where to put him out there in the field so you can go get yourself a professional hitter that really does hit 30 or maybe 40 home runs a year that has that potential in your DH spot. Just like I think you need more power in your corner outfield positions. But the real question is watching him. Everything is going well. I mean, over the course of the season, even with slow start and everything else like that, 277 with a 748 OPS, and I believe it's going to end up a lot better because I think we're going to get a heck of a second half from him. I believe it enough that I made room on my roster because I think he's going to help me win a championship this year because he's producing up at the plate. What do you think, Ed?
Well, yeah, we had talked at length in the past about exactly what we were talking about, him getting better as he gets used to a level. And his bat, I don't think was ever really in question. I think some people have questioned it, but I never really, in looking at his minor league numbers, questioned the fact that the guy could hit. What becomes curious is what happens in the second half, because last year he faltered in August. He only hit 174. It was kind of an ugly thing with a 379 OPS. Yikes. But then in September and October, he finished the year last year hot, 373 with a 964 OPS, which featured 4 home runs.
But remember, that was the time period where he finally got consistent at bats. Grady came in and did the thing that I've been yelling they needed to do with him. He revs up slowly. Like I expected if he has a career that lasts for several years. Lenyn Sosa will always get ramped up slowly coming out of spring training and be slow starting. And then we'll all of a sudden make up for it as the season goes on if you don't pull him out of the lineup.
And not a hot and cold guy. Not a Miguel Vargas where the hots are hot and the colds are really cold. But a guy that will have some ebb and flows, and when he's really hot, he's going to absolutely help you run the table. But when he's not going so well, he'll still be able to contribute something. He's still going to put the bat on the ball. He still has an opportunity to run into one, something like that. His problem really is, as you said, he is the new era Dr. Strangeglove. I mean, the guy just cannot quite field any particular position. He's not a particularly good third baseman. He's seemingly got a very limited range at second base. I think he's got a decent enough arm. But first base, as I've been watching him, he just looks a little lost over there. So maybe in time he figures it out. But again, going back to that game against the Mariners in extra innings, Josh Rojas airmails Lenyn Sosa at first, okay, on a bunt. And that's Josh Rojas screwing up, and he's not going to be part of the team in the future. So if you're going to lose a game because somebody screwed up, let it be Josh. But Lenyn Sosa, one of the things that Gordon Beckham helpfully pointed out was that he had the wrong foot on the bag. He's reaching up with his left hand, but he's got his left foot on the bag, which means that he's not stretching for the ball, which is something that a first baseman should automatically know to do.
He's also short for a first baseman. He's also short for a first baseman.
And he is that.
He's under 6 feet playing first base.
Yeah, which is also a problem. I mean, a regular size first baseman probably gets there. But even a guy who has the forethought to, expand his body to its absolute utmost while trying to keep it on there, he still probably might have gotten there. Now, Rojas really overthrew him, so it may be academic, but Lenyn Sosa is going to have to spend the offseason either learning first base and proving that he can play over there in spite of the height disadvantage, or he's going to have to work on his footwork at third base. I don't think you can teach him range at second, and I think they've got better options there with Chase Mydroth. I think they've got better options even with Brooks Baldwin sitting there if he's not going to be your center fielder. But if not, then maybe he has to be parked in a corner outfield spot, and you just have to live with the defense the way you somewhat lived with Eloy Jimenez, hopefully not with the catastrophic injuries that resulted in him being out there. Probably no worse than Andrew Benintendi.
I could live with corner outfield, maybe. I mean, if he can catch and he can make a throw in from the outfield, like where he's gonna, like runners aren't going to be challenging him. I don't know if he can do that. If he hit 25 home runs a year in a corner outfield position, I'm like, it makes sense. They got to figure him out. I don't know if they're going to figure it out in season or if they're just going to work with him in the offseason to try to figure out what position he is. But if he continues to hit, they have to figure out what's going on with Lenyn Sosa. Cork and Carry at the Park is the proud sponsor of Sox in the Basement, and they're at 33rd and Princeton in the shadow of the ballpark with an award-winning menu of burgers and ballpark favorites, extensive bar with a rotation of craft beers, familiar favorites, spirits, and wines. Your home base for White Sox pregame, postgame, and viewing parties. Cork and Carry at the Park. I just want to read off the offensive stats of this team. Just one really interesting stat, something we talked about at the beginning of the year. Over the last 30 days, the OPS, which is the slugging and the on-base percentage combined. And remember when I said I would just like to have a couple guys with being over like 700? Like you're not a hitter, and your league average is normally right around like 720 for the league. Sometimes it's 715, sometimes it's 725. I don't know what it is right now. I don't. The White Sox have 10 active players on their team with an OPS over the last 30 days of 723 or better. This is a dream for me. This is a dream. Because I was like, I just need a couple of them. 5 of them over the last 30 days have OPSs over 800. Roberts got a 990. Sosa's got an 889. Baldwin's got an 843. He's tearing it up. Edgar Carroll. Oh, this is so much fun to watch one of these catchers doing it. Over the last 30 days, 810 OPS. Miguel Vargas hitting 275 with an 802. Miguel is answering the call of you better play better in the second half because May was not enough. All right? So he's doing something recently. Not a superstar like John Schriffen called him, but he's doing something. And then Talkman's got a 785. Colson Montgomery's got a 777. Benintendi's a 760. Curtis Mead in 9 at-bats, 3 games, is 3 for 9 with a 733. And Kyle Teal's got a 723, hitting 265. All right, so there's hitting going on out there, especially over the last 30 days. Colson Montgomery, though, I'm a little nervous, man. We just talked about it on the last show. He's taking that torpedo bat and he's swinging for the fences with his 8 home runs over the last 30 games. But he's hitting 207. His on-base percentage is only 253. So he's slugging 524 because he's just closing his eyes and swinging like he's the whammer. But that's not sustainable. So, I mean, I'm still excited about him. What you're getting out of him is more than what I thought you were going to get out of him after watching the last year and a half. But that's the first time I said, 207. We need him to get on base. With an on-base percentage of 253, we need him to get on base more because otherwise he's Adam Dunn? I don't want that for my shortstop.
No, and I think the interesting thing there, though, is when you look at, for example, some of the Savant stuff, he's got a pretty decent hard hit percentage, still at 43%, barrel rate 15.4%. That's pretty high up on the team. I mean, he's got some good underlying numbers, Colson does. And the fact that when he is putting the bat on the ball, he's hitting it hard. Okay, that's a good thing. He actually got intentionally walked in the Mariners series because, one, it made sense for the situation to put him on, but two, he's becoming a guy that other teams are looking at and going, well, there's some danger here, man. And even if he is not a high batting average and high home run guy, if he can maintain something in the 260s and hit the ball out of the ballpark consistently against lefties and righties, that's going to be a really dangerous guy to have in your lineup and one of those guys that you sort of build around. Maybe not a superstar level, but certainly a guy that's going to be somebody that has to be game planned for. And you just don't have that with the White Sox lineup for the most part because everybody else has, some problems. Lenyn Sosa, by comparison, is probably, he's kind of morphed into their best all-around hitter to a certain degree. Edgar Caro just doesn't hit the ball out of the ballpark as much as he should. Kyle Teal hasn't shown that, even though Teal is one of the guys that his expected batting average is much higher than his actual batting average. His expecting batting average to this point is 275 for his 257. So he might be running into a little bit of bad luck. But the power is the key for Colson Montgomery. And no, I don't think he's going to be Adam Dunn. And the version of Adam Dunn that the White Sox got was not the version of Adam Dunn that they thought they were getting, because Dunn, when he played for the Reds, was a guy who actually had a relatively decent batting average in addition to the 40 bombs and getting on base at a good clip. If Colson Montgomery turns into prime Adam Dunn, I could live with that out of a shortstop, especially if you can find something similar to that at first base and DH, because now you've got a non-power premium position that is handling that, and it leaves it a little bit more available for third base to be something else. Although I'm not entirely convinced Colson's going to be the shortstop for the entire time. He may end up at third base, because one of the things the White Sox don't seem to have is a guy that they really love at third base at this point.
No, they don't. And he may end up being the third baseman. They may say it's easier for us to take somebody like Mydroth, who can play enough defense, and have him at short, and he can bat towards the bottom of the order. Or they may feel like that they can go in another direction outside of him. So you're right. He may end up over at third base. Before we get out of here, and the Sox Nerd's going to jump in here in a minute and conclude us for the weekend, as he always does. I was looking at the schedule, and they have surpassed their wins from last year.
Yes, they have,
which is great. But I still hold to the belief that they are going to be hotter in the second half than in the first half, and there is a chance. I really believe it. There is a chance at 42-73, this team may not lose 100 games. Like you just see them getting hot. You take out the Seattle series where they get swept. They won 3 out of 3 against Pittsburgh. They sweep them. They take 2 out of 3 against Tampa Bay. They do lose 2 out of 3 to the Cubs, turn right back around against a Philadelphia team that's pretty good and take 2 out of 3. They take 2 out of 3 in Los Angeles before they run into that Seattle series. If you look at their expected wins and losses, according to MLB.com, instead of being 42 and 73, they should be 50 and 65, which means that there's little things that are going wrong. Probably bullpen. This is not a team that's really built to contend, so you're going to have games slip away on you. And then when you look at their home record, they're 24 and 32 at home. And before you say, what's the big deal about that? They're only 8 games under at home after coming off the worst season in the history of baseball, or was it close to it? I can't remember exactly what it was. I'm going to call it the worst season that was ever played.
I think everyone's going to call it the worst season.
Worst season that was ever played. Okay, so coming off the worst season that was ever played, while they're 18 and 41 on the road, which you would expect, they're less than 10 games under 500 at home. Like, they're actually finding a way to win at home. So you have a young team that plays better in their home ballpark, that if a couple of blips and bloops go the other way, has a far better record, that is hitting the ball really well coming out of the break. It's an interesting second half here, and that's all I want to see. If they can continue this into the end of the year, I think you can be excited in the offseason that you saw growth this year, that you saw a team that walked in with nothing but question marks, and you walked out of the year with several Major League Baseball players around the diamond on that roster that you're like, yep, we're going to war with this guy for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and all they have to do, mathematically speaking, is there's 47 games left as you and I are sitting here talking about this. If they go 500, whether they go 24 and 23 or 23 and 24, they'll still fall under that 100 loss mark.
Yeah.
By just a couple of games. But you can't tell me the 500's not out of the question the rest of the way here.
Well, no, they're better than 500 right now coming out of the All-Star break, right? They've got 8 losses out of the All-Star break. I'm just looking at it real quick, and they've got 10 wins. They're 10 and 8 out of the All-Star break so far. So their second half, they started 10 and 8, and that's with losing 4 in a row. The last one against the Angels, even though they took 2 out of 3 in that series, and getting swept by Seattle. And that Seattle one, they go up against Brian Wu, who has been spectacular, and George Kirby, who has been getting better over the last month because he was injured at the beginning of the year. Those are 2 ace pitchers, 2 top 20 in baseball pitchers that they ran up against. And they lost those games 8-3 and 8-6. It was their pitching that beat them. They went up against good pitching and found a way to score runs. They scored 9 runs over those 2 games against those guys, but their pitching gave up 16. That's what got them.
Fellas, here's what has transpired Sox nerd style since the last time I was on, and may I add parenthetically, 'tis easier to come up with gems when the team is playing better. Anywho, Colson Montgomery continues to provide good material. The rookie shortstop finished the Seattle series with 8 home runs, making him the first player in MLB history to hit that many dingers in his first 97 at-bats. By comparison, it took Frank Thomas 237 at-bats to hit his 8th career homer. The Big Hurt's 8th 4-bagger, by the way, was the Sox' first nocturnal blast in their current home. Last week, I mentioned that Monty hits the ball hard. I did a little more digging on that, and his homers continue to prove that out. 6 of his 8 bombs would be out of at least 27 of the 30 MLB stadiums, with 4 being a homer in every ballpark. Speaking of homers, Luis Robert Jr. hit his 100th round tripper on Wednesday, and he swiped his 100th base on Thursday. He became just the 4th player in Sox history to hit the century mark in both those categories. The others are the criminally underrated Alexei Ramirez, Hall of Famer Minnie Minoso, and Ray Durham, a Sox nerd favorite. Andrew Benintendi launched his 100th homer on March 25th, making this the first season since 2015 that the Sox have had at least 2 players reach that milestone in the same season. That year, Ramirez, Giovanni Soto, and Melky Cabrera all hit number 100 in Sox yarns. Hey, Jacob Amaya is back and he's wearing 0. He joins Oscar Gamble, Danny Mendick, Nick Maton, and Billy Hamilton as Sox players to don 0. Thanks to Maton, this is the first time the Sox have had 2 players wear 0 in the same season. The Sox recently acquired left-handed pitcher Brian Hudson from the Milwaukee Brewers. My Brewer fan friend Shaq, who has been relentlessly busting my chops about Andrew Vaughn, hit me to the fact that Hudson had an all-star worthy first half in 2024, and boy, he wasn't kidding. Prior to the All-Star game that season, Hudson was 4-1 with a 1.49 ERA, a whip of 0.7, and 53 strikeouts in 48.1 innings. Things have been rocky for the Godfrey, Illinois native since then, but he did have a scoreless outing on Thursday, which included a strikeout of Randy Arozarena. At 6'8", Godfrey is tied with Brandon McCarthy, Jeff Nelson, Adam Russell, and Chris Volstedt as the fourth tallest player in Sox history behind 6'9" Lane Ramsey, 6'10" Andy Sisko, and 6'11" John Rauch. All those tall boys are pitchers, wouldn't you know? Before I get to my zinger, I remind you that gems like these and long-form pieces are on my blog, which you can link to at soxinthebasement.com. My zinger, in honor of the 20th anniversary of the World Champions, I'm going to be throwing out zingers frequently about that team, giving you gems you may not know about the 2005 Sox. A rash of injuries and a Joe Crede ejection forced manager Ozzie Guillen to use Jermaine Dye, of all people, at shortstop in a 2-1 loss at Oakland on April 27, 2005. That game marked the only time Crede and Dye played the position in their careers. That's it, guys. More than you probably wanted to know about Monty Bombs, milestone homers, Sox zeros, and tall hurlers.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.